Welcome to Carry On, this week's roundup of aviation and business travel news with Nevil Gibson. Now, Singapore Airlines has made some major changes to its schedule for the next year. What's going on here?
Yeah, we're talking here about the northern summer, and Singapore Airlines, as we've discussed before, is one of the first airlines out of the block. I mean, it's basically rebuilt its entire network, and now it's even adding to that before some airlines even get out of the stocks. And what it's doing here, it's showing where the future traffic is, and a lot of it's to Australia. So the big headline news from this is that the 380 is going to be brought back onto the Melbourne and Sydney routes from March, and that'll run through till October, which is replacing existing aircraft. So those 380s, one of them's coming off the New York run, so they're cutting back a little bit to North America. They're launching new services into Manchester, which the flights to Manchester are quite interesting. They go via Houston, and there's another one through to New York that goes via Frankfurt, and so they're playing around with substituting aircraft there. But the big growth is from Singapore up into Japan, Korea, Taiwan, these places, and in Southeast Asia. So it's a big move there where people using Singapore Airlines are going to find a much bigger choice of onward flights into basically East Asia, Southeast Asia, and some different routes to North America and to Europe.
Now, Qantas says that bringing back its mothballed A380s, which have been in the desert while COVID has been around, bringing them back is going to be quite a hard task. Why?
Well, everybody's been asking the Chief Executive, Alan Joyce, when are you getting the 380s back? Because Singapore's brought back virtually all of it. But Qantas has still got 10 in mothballs. They're hoping to get most 6 of them up and running by the end of this year. Everyone wants the 380s back, by the way. And Qantas has had to cut back some routes, like from Melbourne. Seems to be the one that suffers most because of the lack of 380s. But he explained that to get just one aircraft out of the Mojave Desert back into the air takes 4,500 hours. That's 2 months' work for 10 engineers. They replace all the wheels, that's 22 wheels, 16 brakes, all the fire cylinders and things like that inside the aircraft. So he's saying it's not that easy, it takes a long time, but we're well into doing. They're going to do 10 out of the 12, 2 are going to be dropped out completely, and 6 will be on the routes by the end of this year.
Now, Boeing is building a new research facility in Bangalore in India. What are the implications of this?
Yeah, this is interesting because Boeing does have a research facility in Melbourne to support mainly military aircraft, but and some of its other aircraft. But this is a brand new facility that's going to be doing those eVTOLs, these flying taxi type electric driven planes, and also it's moving into low emissions. It wants to be producing aircraft, no emission aircraft by 2050. That's the thing. So, but they've got a huge team of Indian engineers already at a plant, but this is a brand new one, and they're going to be employing 4,000 Indian engineers. It's going to be the biggest plant for research outside of the United States for Boeing.
Now, Fiji Airways is expanding its South Pacific network at the moment, and it's also got a new tie-up with British Airways.
Yeah, it's interesting because the tie-up is through their frequent flyer club, Club Taboo, as they call it in Fiji, and the Executive Club and British Airways. So they're joining together. So basically it's a code share for passengers. It's going to make it a lot easier. But the new routes and extra flights that they're putting on from Fiji are going to Samoa and Tonga. Instead of these being a day service, you're up there and back in a day, they're going to be staying overnight. And so it's going to be much easier for even New Zealanders using Nandi can be going up to Samoa, and Tonga is going to be a few more options there.
And finally, British Airways is heading deeper into the American heartland.
Yeah, we always think of America as basically having airports, one down the east coast for people in the Pacific and down the West Coast for Pacific flights and East Coast for flights from Europe. But British Airways actually going to be flying into Cincinnati in North Kentucky. This is one of the very few flights, international type flights, into these into Ohio states like that. So they'd also fly into one or two other interesting places in the middle of America, but this is quite a new move into Cincinnati.
Who's its target market with that sort of route?
Well, a lot of Americans live in the Midwest, and they're going to be able to fly direct to London rather than have to transit through New York or Washington or even Atlanta.
Neville, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.